Welcome to Life Astrologer. I'm Anna Isabel, and today I have a fellow astrologer with me. Welcome, Julian Venables.
Hello, Anna. Nice to meet you, and thank you for inviting me on your show.
Well, it was just, I was looking at your chart, and of course, the first thing which we can't miss is how much Leo there is there. It's, you're a Leo, you've got a Leo ascendant, Jupiter and Mercury in Leo. So talk us through what it is to have so much Leo. Do you roar?
Well, that's quite interesting. In my own world, in my own imagination, I think I roar quite a lot. But I'm not sure. People, I could say nice things about my Leoness, and I could say not so nice things about my Leoness. But I think I'm quite reasonably well tempered and reasonably well balanced with it, because I have the moon in Pisces and I have Neptune squaring a lot of those Leo planets. So Neptune kind of squares the Jupiter, the Mercury and the Sun pretty much from the fourth house. And that tends to have made me quite a sort of dreamer. It's probably why I'm an astrologer, one of the reasons, because I wasn't ever really sure what I wanted to do. I had an interesting kind of couple of full starts with careers. It's a long story. To talk about that, I have to talk about Saturn in the 9th house as well. But yes. But Leoness wise, some people would tell me that I'm very self-centered, and I can only think of myself. And but other people would see it as being, actually, he's a really nice guy. So that's me, because I feel that my light shines so brightly that I can't even see it in myself. And so I have a very strong sense of individuality, and I'm very fixed in that way. Nothing really sets me off, just me being me. Some people would say that I'm too selfish, or I'm too self-centered.
No, I think for Leo, that's as it should be, and people can interpret that in different ways. But speaking as a therapist, we have to have a strong sense of self. And a Leo who doesn't have a strong sense of self is much more likely to turn into the tyrant king than into King Arthur. So it's really important, actually, that does have a strong sense of self. And I think you mentioned Neptune there as being a softening influence, perhaps. But actually, Neptune undermines. And so it's about, in a square, it undermines. So also about, maybe, yes, there's an element of keeping the more, shall we say, flamboyant aspects of Leo in check.
Yes.
I would question whether the more flamboyant aspects of Leo should be kept in check. It's balance, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
What extent does keeping the flamboyancy in check undermine the sense of self and identity? Because Leo gets quite a rap, being accused of being self-centered and selfish and so on. But the ruler is the sun, and the sun can't help but shine. And we all moan when it doesn't, when it's got the clouds around. And the higher, what I see as the higher vibration of Leo is about generosity. The sun doesn't take anything away, it only gives. So if you have a strong sense of self as a Leo, you're more likely to be giving than demanding attention. It's, if it's, in the dog world, and sorry, dogs do crop up quite a lot because I live with one. But one of the things is that top dogs are confident dogs, and they're much less likely to be aggressive. They've got nothing to prove, and they're much more likely to be tolerant of other dogs and puppies, etc., because there's nothing to prove. It's the wannabes that are more likely to challenge dogs and be aggressive, etc. And I think that's a very good way of thinking about the need for a strong sense of self.
Yes.
And of course, we're talking about Leo, which is the epitome of that. Mm-hmm. So how does that feel when you look at it in that way?
Well, that's very boosting, Richie. Thank you. Yes. I guess I've always wanted to be seen to be creative in some way, and for me it came through astrology. That was the way that when I found astrology, I knew straight away that I had to be an astrologer. It was just like an instant download, an instant sense of, well, now this is it. There's nothing else. I've got it. And some people say I've got Sun at 28 Leo, 28 or 28 and point, and a half of that. So I'm very close to Regulus, being born in 1967. And they say that Regulus is often called the astrologer's star. And so, in a way, I think I might have sort of really found that in me. My family could never accept it. So there was, so they always saw me a bit like the black sheep, a little bit like the one who was, oh yes, you do that, don't you? And kind of stuff. And that was a little bit difficult at first because they were mildly ribbing it, often. But not, just didn't have ears for it anyway. They didn't want to listen to when I wanted to speak my truth about it. But the Leoness is very strong in me, and I actually have a very ancient ancestry that I'm very proud of. My Leoness is very proud of that. So it goes back to, we've got a family tree that goes back to 935 AD, which I think is pretty cool, really, and I've always liked that. And that's that Mars in Scorpio in the 4th house as well. And that, various things that are distant now in terms of ancestry. It's all a long way away, or several generations ago. But various things that made me really feel like I'm here on a purpose or here on a mission. And yet sometimes I have things like, is my destiny, will I get noticed, and now I'm 53, I'm still wondering, is it just like a vague kind of dream, or will I get somewhere with this, in a way that I think a creative, it's like a need for some sort of respect or some sort of, but this then brings in the Saturn in my chart, which is in Aries, the retrograde, conjunct the MC in the 9th house side. And I was sent to an all boys school, and they were like, all my school reports, and I've looked over them again, years past. I went to dig them out at mum's and dad's house, and they always say the same thing, he's very creative, he's very intelligent, but he's a dreamer, and he's in this imaginary world, and we can't get him to apply himself to anything, right? So I wouldn't apply myself to any of the subjects at school, just impossible. Wasn't sporting, and they just couldn't get me to do anything that they wanted me to do. So I wasn't fitting the streamlining that they required, and so they dropped me down a year, and that when I was about 11 years old, I got dropped down a year, which devastated me, right, psychologically, completely. All boys competitive prep school, and suddenly I was left 1 year behind, and everyone went ahead, and it just completely shattered me. And so all the younger boys, and when you're at school, is 1 year makes a big difference, So I was completely blown out of, completely destroyed. And when I then, it affected my whole career, actually, my whole education, because it then had this delayed effect, which I guess is the retrograde part of that Saturn. But and I ended up going to the wrong school, the wrong secondary school. I chose a different school at the last minute. My family were like, no, you're down to go to this school, this particular school. And I was like, no, I think I'm going to go this place. And they were like, no, you know. But they let me do it. So I went to this other school where I knew nobody. So I was sent off to a boarding school, and I didn't know anybody there. Not you know, no one. In fact, actually, I do know one person who'd gone who was in that year ahead, who'd gone ahead. And when I got there, he was like, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. So I was on my own at this boarding school going, oh shit. Because I was down to go to another school, which I would have known 75% of the boys there, because they all went through my old school. So I kind of estranged myself. And I still to this day don't know why. It changed my life. And then I dropped out of my A-levels. 1 year before A-levels were to be taken, I dropped out. And I ended up catching up with all my old friends from, I was born and pretty much brought up in Brighton and Hove my whole life. And all my old prep school friends, I bumped into them on the bus one day when I was like 17, having just dropped out of my A-levels, and they'd all done their A-levels, and it was like, oh my God. And we all just had a great time for that summer. They all then had their gap year, and I had no plans. I hadn't taken A-levels, so I wasn't going to go to a university or polytechnic. And this is all that Saturn in the ninth, you see, in Aries. And instead, I was desperate, thinking, because everyone's lining up their careers. Oh, I got this in my A-levels and I got that. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so I ended up opting to try and join the army. And I went and did. I actually joined. I got past all my tests to go to Sandhurst. They were like, oh, you're going to be great officer material. You'll be brilliant at it. And of course, if you look at my chart, Saturn in Aries, Mars in Scorpio, 3 planets in Leo and my ascendant, I was perfect officer material, right? And I passed all the tests. This is before I discovered astrology, you know. But now I look at my chart, I think, shit, you know, excuse my language, but you know, there's a kind of military quality in there that would have passed muster, if you like, you know. And so I was so excited about that I thought, well, I'll join the territorials for a bit. And I went and did territorial army, and that I went in as a squaddy. And they were like, I was like, I'm going to Sandhurst in 2 years' time. They were like, the corporals and sergeants were like, oh, are you now? and they decided to throw an absolute spanner in my works, you know. So they really, really ruined it for me, and they really picked on me. And I actually think I have PTSD from that, you know, because we did 2 weeks full army training in Catterick in North Yorkshire, up on the moors, winter, pouring with rain, in a little dugout with a plastic sheet, eating rations out of a tin. And I was stuck on the edge of the encampment, and we were attacked by the enemy, which was the corporals and the sergeant, fully trained soldiers, right? And because I was out on the edge, they knew I was there that night. They knew that they were going to get me. And they threw tons of thunder flashes at me, which are really shocking. I mean, it's like a grenade, right? But it's not a grenade, you know. And it really, talk about anxiety levels and various things like that. It was scary, really scary. And then they sent me home after 2 weeks. Yeah, enjoy Sandhurst. And I got back home, and I went down to the pub with my friends, and they were like, you know, excuse me, they were like, oh my God, you kidding? You went and did all that, you nutcase, you know. Look, come on, chill out, man. And then began my realization that I didn't want to do the army. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And instead, I was taken to Glastonbury Festival by some friends, my same school friends, who were in their gap year. And they were like, we'll take you to this festival. I was like, what's a festival? Just you wait and see. And everything changed, literally, you know. And so over that weekend, completely transformed with various assistances from various substances and things. Discovered a whole new world, and then it was down to Bob Marley records and Carlos Santana and all the rest of it. And I was like, I'm not joining the army. No way. And I then decided, to follow a different path. That led to me then traveling the world and doing all sorts of different things. And astrology, I discovered astrology about a year after handing my notice in from the army. I was living in Brighton then, becoming a hippie basically, and that's that Saturn in Aries path. I could tell you loads more about that, but there's something there that gives you an idea of that sort of.
It's more than that, because there's quite a lot in what you said. And firstly, the school environment and the sudden changes, that were made, as regards your education, and alienation too, because not using the equal house system, you've got Uranus and Pluto sitting in the third, which Uranus in the third usually brings a lot of changes within education. Some it's changes that are out of our control, and actually always it's education's out of our control. And there you had that experience of being put back a year, definitely not your choice, definitely out of your control. And then that is the Pluto experience of alienation, that experience in school, because everybody else is in a different year to you. Yes. So it's actually incredibly humiliating to go through that experience as well.
Unbelievable. I still suffer today.
Yeah, it's very humiliating experience, and it's very Pluto in the way that it leaves you so raw. So you've got the shock of Uranus combined with powerlessness of Pluto in there. I think the other thing that struck me, of course, is that you've got a moon conjunction to Chiron in Pisces, and and then of course we've got the Mars Neptune conjunction in a square, as we've already talked about. So I think it really is, as I read your chart, a journey of where you're swinging, because from one extreme to the other, because on the one hand, Leo, as we've already said, is I am, and you have to have that sense of self, as we've already said, in order to be a healthy Leo. But then you've got the moon in Pisces, and it's conjunct Chiron, and Pisces just on its own is asking for the dissolution of the self. And so that's a really difficult thing to integrate to such disparate energies, because on the one hand, excuse me, you have Pisces saying, no, there is no self. There is a connection to everything, everybody, the divine. There is transcendence, no boundaries. And you have Leo going, well, wait a minute, I don't even know who I am yet. I think all pulling. And I think when you talked about the aid of substances, of course, that's a very Piscean way of transcendent, of looking for transcendence. So reconciling those two, I think, is quite tricky. A lot of people do it by pursuing something creative and doing that and becoming different. In fact, the person that comes to mind is Robert Plant, Led Zeppelin's lead singer, moon in Pisces. Perfect, because his journey was through music, and that's how he became, the shining Leo. so it's, you kind of need to do that, but you've got Chiron.
I have a famous rock star time twin. Someone also born the 22nd of August 1967, which is my birth date, was Lane Staley, of the lead singer of Alice in Chains.
Right. So you see, again, there's a very interesting illustration of what I just said there.
Exactly. Yeah.
But of course, the other thing is status, and it's Saturn, as you say, very close to the MC, saying, well, the status. And by, just listening to you and your family's expectations, it's about going through that funnel towards status. And there's you, a creative soul, going, well, actually, that feels too tight. Those shoes just don't fit. What am I going to do? Well, I don't know, because I've only been given this option. This option doesn't work. Oh, I know, the army officer, brilliant, status. Yeah. But there again, you were kind of knocked off the pedestal. What do you think about that Moon Chiron conjunction that you've got in Pisces?
Agony. Emotionally, oh yeah. Rejected by everyone, seriously, including my mum, of course. Starts with my mum, who, all respect her, she's still alive. I'm not going to start launching into her at all, because she's old and I respect her completely. I know what it's like. I'm a parent myself now. So, and when I finally became a parent, then I could see, only then did I understand why my parents were like they were. And I think that's the whole thing about parenthood. You only understand it when you have a child of your own. That's how it works, and that's why generation after generation. And it kind of, so the learning lesson there was really, really difficult. I had no thoughts of anything like raising a family. It was not even in my consciousness at all, not once, until someone came into my life who shaped and formed that for me and actually took control, and so and it's been a really, by staying focused on that, I've learned so much about myself in the last 12 years. My daughter's almost 12 now, and I've learned so much about myself, and not to run, no more running away, no escapism, just day-to-day routine, and all the things have helped me immensely. So it's been a good thing for me. And that's the Saturn as well, because by transit, when my wife and daughter arrived in the UK, Saturn crossed my IC within the same day. Actually, Saturn crossed the IC of my chart, and now it's crossed my descendant, and that's been a 10-year journey, and so it's very interesting in terms of how I've matured into my Saturn, and understand myself better. It's a lot of the time it's not felt like I wanted to do that. Like I've always, all the time, I am a fantasist, I'm an escapist. So I'm always dreaming of tropical islands, living on mountain ranges, going back to India, whatever, all these different things. So I lived in India for 5 years, by the way, on and off. So I spent a lot of time in India. That's where I really started to get into the astrology. That was 1991 to 1996, and that was just an amazing. I loved it, absolutely loved it, and I was able to completely lose myself there, in that Neptunian kind of, as one could, I was very close to kind of Sadhu, kind of dreadlocks, and really having a time of my life. And thinking, thank God I didn't do a career. Thank God I didn't do any of that. And had the ephemeris in my backpack and drawing charts for not the full mathematical chart, but I look at the planets' positions and sketch stuff out and talk astrology all day long. And living on the beaches of Goa, India, up in the Himalayas, everywhere. It was just a lovely life, and then through that, yoga, meditation, Buddhism also slacked off now, you know, because the fatherhood thing has, you know, worn me out a bit actually. But I still dream. I dream of that all the time.
I would say that that's where your education actually began, and that was your proper education, is when you went off and did that. Just so many thoughts crossing my mind there. Yes, but essentially that's the biggest one. The biggest thought of them all was just thinking, well, that's where you did your apprenticeship. You know, I can remember drawing charts by hand, the full thing at psychic fairs, because I didn't have a computer that I could, you know, just rustle things up. So I had my ephemeris, I had all my kit with me, and drawing up the full thing and doing charts. And that is where how you pick up that craft, is by practicing and doing it again and again. And you were immersed, and you were immersed in a foreign country, and you know, that moon in Pisces sitting in the ninth with Saturn. But of course you have to grow up. But the other big thought, which I had when I was listening to you, is that it's the journey from prince to king, isn't it? And it's not about being on stage, and it's not about being the center of attention. We grow up when we know that there's more to the world than us. That's proper adulthood. And, you know, Saturn on your MC says you have to do that. And in fact, it's trining your Jupiter. So, you know, that's a very nice thing. And Jupiter trines your MC too. So there's that structure and faith as well, because I think, you know, you're talking about Buddhism and, you know, yoga, all of that is your spiritual development. So it's not even just the astrology on its own, how to do it. It's the philosophy behind it, which is about a way of viewing the world and understanding the world. So, but nevertheless, part of that means growing up and engaging with the world and a man and taking responsibility. And of course, fatherhood, I suspect for a dreamer would be the way to have to say, okay, well, this is now me being responsible. Because if you just stayed in that, shall we call it, education mode the whole time, that beyond a certain point becomes self-indulgence.
Yes.
And then that would be the selfish part of Leo.
Yes.
When you take what you learn and use your Pisces and your Leo to share it and give it away, whether otherwise through doing readings, through teaching, through writing, and then you take all of that life experience and become a parent with it. That's the grown-up Leo, which is, I suppose, more attractive than the prince.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. And that's very interesting, really insightful, in fact. And I think, I had to stop the self-indulgent lifestyle because I blew my barn doors wide open, basically, you know, with the moon in Pisces as well, that moon Chiron. It was willing to take any amounts of things in order to get the bliss state or whatever it was that I was seeking. And so, yeah, I had to actually stop. I actually had to draw a line and say, okay, I've done it now, you know, and but that didn't happen until about the year 2000, 2001, 2002 even. I then said, that's it, you know, I can't do this anymore. And so I stopped all the partying, and I used to organize club nights, nightclub nights in Brighton, you know, all the Goa stuff, you know. I was very involved in that. I did stuff in London. We did stuff all over the world. I was an artist painting fluorescence backdrops. before computers, so it was all before what they have now, which is like big video screens of stuff, you know. But we used to do these UV backdrops, and we would be employed to be taking them all over the place and decorating clubs and parties, because we put them up between the palm trees on Goa Beach, you know, on the beaches of Goa, and then we'd roll them up and fly them back to England, and party promoters would be like, "We want those backdrops. They've just been in India," and we'd be like, "Yep." So,
that is such a brilliant expression of Leo. You need that. It's, you know, because Leo really is about play. You can't be creative play. So you have to play. And it seems to me that in your childhood, that kind of free play was probably limited. So you have to have that opportunity to do that, because how else are you going to discover who you are?
Yeah. I think my friends got me in trouble a lot when I was younger. I'd always be getting in trouble because of my friends, and that's too complicated to go into now, but it's one of those things. Anyways, you know, yeah, I'm here doing astrology. I love what I do, you know. I really love being an astrologer. I might not be the best. Well, no, I mean, I think people like me for my readings as well. I'm very slow at building up a client. I've got regular clients, you know, people who come back every month and stuff, and I've got room for more, by the way. But you know, I really love what I do, you know, and it's a slow progress as well. You know, there's a sense of just being it is good enough. You know, I think England is, here in the UK, I think astrology has been largely derided by so many people for so long, and just holding the torch. I feel like I'm holding the torch, you know, holding the light to try and get people into it, you know. And I have a very strong historical thing that I really, really dig, which is I don't want to be, you see, the problem with Leo, right? It can be very egotistical, and there is a problem with ego, I'm sure, you know. But I do try to be mindful as well, and yeah.
Well, I think the challenge for you, and it's a good challenge, because it means that hopefully you won't stray from the path too far, is to allow yourself enough room to appreciate yourself without that getting out of hand. And so this is the balancing act between the Leo and strong Neptune energies that we've been highlighting in our conversation. So I think that that's the real trick there. You need to have enough boundaries to be able to live and be fair to yourself as well as others. But at the same time, know that the joy is in the giving, not in the spotlight.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's the inner struggle, particularly with Saturn there, demanding that you have status as well. But it's getting that balance right, and not getting lost in the measurement of success, which of course you clearly were programmed to do when you were growing up.
Interesting.
And when you stop looking for the measure of success and you purely revel in the joy of the spiritual pursuit that you engage with, and you share that, when you revel in that joy, that's when things are likely to fall into place. And you know that because you obviously have studied Buddhism, and you know exactly what I'm saying, because it's the fundamental principle of so much spiritual teaching.
Yeah.
So but you have to, you don't have a choice, because you have to keep that as a reminder to yourself, because you're actually, it's there in your chart. It's describing exactly that tension and giving you the impetus to actually live it out.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting, because at the same time you've got the North Node in Aries, and that completely demands that you know how to stand up for yourself. And maybe the experience you had in the army, you know, perhaps a different chart with a North Node in Aries, it could have been the making of you, taught you to stand up for yourself, and made you stand your ground. But
it's interesting. I was born 11 days late. My mum's told me several times over the years, you know, oh, you weren't to be born August the 11th, which would have been moon in Libra. Yeah. Okay. And I find that very interesting, you know, that I was born after full moon instead, with that moon in Chiron and Pisces, you know, and the moon, the sun moon, the lunar phase, of course, is just after full moon. So there's that huge kind of sun versus moon thing going on, you know, where the it's interesting, because it would have been sun in Leo, good aspect to moon in Libra, you know, and it wasn't. So,
well, no, clearly not meant to be. So one of the things which you are now involved in is you are running the Brighton and Hove Astrology.
Yes.
So what are you as a Leo bringing to that group?
So I've been the chair of the group for about 7 or 8 years. So I organize the speakers, and once I've got them to say yes to a particular date, I then get their you know, talk description and their talk and bio and send it into the secretary of our group, who then puts it on the website and sends it out as a newsletter. And I talk to the group about 2 or 3 times a year, twice a year usually. But I present to the group online in this whole phase of those last sort of year and a bit. We've been doing it all on Zoom, but we did used to meet, and we will meet again at a really nice venue. So in Central Hove, there's a converted church, which is a community centre, and the top floor of the community centre is the vaulted ceiling of the old church. So it's like this, and it's a really nice room to meet in, because it's the vaulted ceiling, you know, so it's kind of got the wooden beams and various things, and just outside the door is the main stained glass window, that one of the big stained glass windows that has the four apostles, which are the fixed signs of the zodiac. So we see that as the astrology stained glass window kind of thing. So we meet there, and we've had great meetings there, and it's a really nice venue, and we'll go back there again. But at the moment we've adapted to Zoom, so we meet every 2 weeks. So we have a lecture every 2 weeks, which is more than other groups do. Most groups tend to be every month. We meet every 2 weeks. And you know, we like to hear from astrologers who want to talk for us. So, you know, we look to people who would call themselves professional astrologers. So anybody who has a talk they'd like to give, then just drop a line to me, you know, and I'll get you on the schedule. So, you know, anybody who would like to give us a talk, very welcome to come along.
A long time I've talked for your group. I think I might have to do that again soon, especially Zoom, because that's a lot easier for me.
Yes. at the moment, what we're going to do is we're going to carry on the Zooms. Okay, and we're going to start doing Saturday workshops at the centre, the community church that we used to meet in. So that's how it's going to plan out over the next sort of year or so. So yeah, our schedule. We have availability now the first week of January, if you like. So I'm booked up till that. We're booked up till then. So because I sort of do them in blocks. I tend to do them in sort of 6 months at a time.
Yeah.
So, but if you want to talk in the first within the January, next year, then let me know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking about different things here, and the first is you are going to be on my podcast, Lightways Astrology, talking about elements. And for viewers, I'm going to be putting a link to that on the notes. So be sure to tune in to Lightways Astrology for that. But also, if people want to get in touch with you, Julian, how do they do that?
I have a website called london.astrologer.com. So that's london.astrologer.com. I used to live in London, or have done several times over the years. And I have this historic link to the City of London that I'm really interested. That's why I call myself london.astrologer.com. Because I'm a freeman of a livery company, I'm actually going to become a liveryman this next year. And that's an ancestral thing that I discovered or rediscovered, and I find that really interesting. So that's why I call myself London Astrologer. It's kind of connected to that sense of a historical thing for me. So that's my website. And so you can book readings there, and I can just happy to talk astrology, interviews as well. But I am writing a new idea, which is called the Weekly Almanac. And so I'm rearranging the horoscope column. I'm not doing horoscope columns as the 12 star signs anymore. I'm now doing planet-to-planet dynamics. So you can find those on my website. And I'm looking actually for anybody interested who might be interested in using those for media. So it's original writing. So go to londоnastrologer.com and you can read my weekly almanacs.
And if people want to join the Brighton and Hove Astrology group, what do they need to do?
You need to go to the Brighton and Hove Astrology Circle website, and then apply to become a member there. Membership's very cheap there, and you get a discount for the talks. So it's all on the website, to be honest. I don't have the figures in my head right now.
That's it. That's the place.
Membership's about £12 a year. So
wonderful.
And you get a discount on each talk for becoming a member.
So I'll make sure all of that information is in the notes, as well as a link to the Lightways Astrology podcast to give you the opportunity to learn more about the elements. Julian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Anna. It's nice to be interviewed, actually. It does my Leo a world of good. I hope.
Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you soon again. Next week, I will be talking to Nicola Alsop about fertility and her work on fertility. So do make sure you look out for that.